I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
And tonight we are talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 6, The Sound of Thunder. Written by Bo Yeon Kim and Erica Lapolt, and directed by Douglas Aronofsky. And Dave, these are actually the same people who wrote and directed the Short Treks episode, The Brightest Star.
Right. So they had done the previous Saru flashback.
Yeah, and I think it's obvious this was all this was produced together. They were shooting that when they were shooting this.
Makes a ton of sense.
So,
They'd have all the sets and everything. They did definitely show more stuff in this. But, there was not a ton more shots of, like, cityscapes or anything on that. What's his planet called?
Kaminar.
What is it?
Kaminar.
Kaminar. Okay.
This episode is very much a sequel to The Brightest Star, which, if you don't remember, that is the short trek that showed the origin story of Saru.
Yeah, his secret origin, in which he made a signal flare, escaped the oppression of his people, and was picked up by Georgiou on the... Not the Shenzhou, or was it? It was the Shenzhou.
No, the Archimedes.
The Archimedes. And we found out a bit about him, but it did leave us with that impression. I know I felt this way at the time that, like, I didn't quite understand, because I had always thought that there was, like... I didn't think that the prey species, it seemed like they were off-world. Or that's the vibe that I got from that short, was that you would get, like, taken or beamed off-world to some end. And I didn't quite... It didn't quite add up to what I'd been thinking that Saru's predator-prey species was like. I liked the episode. It was still one of my favorites, but...
Yeah, and he's also talking about, like, this weird stuff about, what about when I enter Vahari and all that? What are you talking about, Saru? I don't know that Vahari.
Right.
What's going on?
I guess we're going to find out in this very episode.
Yeah, so this is the episode that... Also, what we saw 2 weeks ago in an oboe for Charon, when Saru lost his Gangula.
Yep.
we do get those questions answered.
Now he's a man.
Well... we're just gonna give our opening statements, and it's just me and Dave. We don't have any guests joining us, but
right. But we're gonna cut back to some guests before too long, so don't panic.
Yeah,
you don't have to look at our ugly mugs the whole time.
We'll be bringing people back on board probably next week, but
we felt only we could probably talk about the secret origin of Saru.
Yeah, we both have a lot to say on the subject of Kaminar. And even though Dave didn't even remember the name of the planet till I reminded him.
You stumbled over it too.
But
if it was called Kelpia, like it should be,
no, that's
then
stupid.
I would remember.
That's like Earth should be called Huma, because that's where humans are from.
No, Earth should be called Earthia.
Then we're Earthians?
We're Earthers. Or they use that term often enough.
But we're just both going to give our opening statements on this episode.
Yep.
And just give you a brief, non-spoiler-ish overview of our very general feelings, and then we'll go into spoilers in more detail.
Yep.
Dave, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I'm going to go first.
Okay.
I'm going to ruin things for you.
Go for it.
All right. So, I found myself much more involved with this episode than the previous ones, and very excited by it, and I felt it functioned to me almost like a feature film Star Trek outing, where... It was pretty high in action. It was effectively standalone. Had some big concepts, some big character beats and emotional arcs. Every once in a while, there were some things where I'm like, wait, what was that plot point? They kind of zoomed past that real quick. And there's one or two things where when we talked about it afterwards, where we're like, well, I'm not 100% sure that every little question was answered, everything adds up perfectly. But that was actually one of the things that makes it more cinematic, too, because movies gloss over details like that all the frickin' time, and they're a little bit more action-oriented and all that. Anyway, I found it a very engaging episode that both propelled Saru's story forward, created some memorably scary bad guys, and left them with lots of stuff to do with them in the future. I think that it created an interesting chessboard that they can play around with now. What you say, Fatheree?
Well, this is the point in the show where normally I give my opening statement first, and then you say, well, I largely agree with you, Fatheree.
Mm-hmm.
But I largely agree with you, Dave.
You suck.
And, this is currently my favorite episode of Season 2. All the questions I had about Saru, all the things that were bugging me about, they really need to explain, like, just how exactly these threat gangula work, or what's the deal with his people and their prey status on their planet, their relationship with the predator species.
Right, how long has it been going on?
Yeah,
what's the exact deal?
All of my questions, I feel, have been answered, and they were satisfying answers, and some of them were very surprising in a good way. I like to be surprised.
Right, like I think at some point we probably all had the notion that Saru will go back to his planet and in some way they will be liberated, or the status quo is going to change for him. So that's, you know how I said last week that Culber's return was kind of a given, and I was a little bit bored with it as a result of kind of watching them, some of the stuff with him, I don't know, I wasn't super involved in it all the time. Here, I think it's kind of a given that this was going to happen in some way to the planet, but I was involved. I don't know quite what... I mean, this was big, kind of... Like I said, it had that sort of big movie happening.
Well, I think that we've also had a lot of time to get connected to Saru as a character. Mm-hmm. Possibly more so than anyone else on the show. And they really made us connect with them even more. I think that Saru is probably a more popular character. If you were to poll the audience... I think more people would say that he's their favorite character than Burnham.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
But also, like, after we were scared we were going to lose him a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And a lot of people were really fooled by that episode. I know I was. I was like, oh my god, are they actually going to kill this guy? There's no way. Oh, it looks like they are.
Yeah.
But...
That was a good trick.
This episode also had just some really cool sci-fi shit that was very well done. Some very excellent production value that was very well utilized to flesh out this world and tell this story. And it also had some cool traditional Star Trek moral complexity to what was going on.
Yeah, there were actually several things that happened in this episode that had me kind of turning things over in my head as I like to, and I think will make for some interesting discussion in a few minutes when we get around to specifics.
But unfortunately, I don't think it was a perfect episode, so it comes in a little shy from like true greatness in the ranks of Star Trek episodes. I love it, but I do have some problems with it. Some of them are trivial nitpicks. Some of them I think are a little bit bigger issues, but we'll get into those in a moment.
We're gonna rip it a new one.
No, we're just gonna give it a fair a fair shakedown.
It's what we've always done.
But I will go ahead and transition into the warp speed summary. So now you're gonna get all the spoilers. So be warned.
Let's do it. Hit it.
So things kick off with the Disco crew continuing their mission to investigate the red bursts as a new burst explodes in the skies above the planet Kaminar, aka the homeworld of Saru. The ship sets course and hauls ass over there, and we finally get some history on the Ba'ul, the predator species that inhabits Kaminar and preys on Saru's people, the Kelpians. Turns out the Ba'ul are a warp-capable race deemed hostile by the Federation during their first contact about 18 years earlier. That's when Saru made contact with Starfleet and got the hell off that planet before he went through the Fatheree and got ate. And after 2 weeks ago, we learned that Kelpians can survive the Fatheree, and the great balance of Kaminar we learned about in The Brightest Star is all a lie. When the Disco makes it to Kaminar, Pike sends Saru and Burnham to Saru's little hometown village to ask around if any Kelpians had witnessed the Red Burst or saw anything related to the Red Angel. When they arrive, they meet Saru's sister, Sarana, who is now the village priestess. She invites her brother and Burnham into her hut for some tea, which I assume has salt in it, because that's how we know Saru drinks it.
Do we really know that?
Yeah, he's done it twice on the show. Pours salt in his tea.
It's horrible.
Sarana, though, gets upset when she learns that her brother only returned home to look for this Red Angel. She accuses him of abandoning his family and running from accepting his place in the Great Balance. Tea time family drama then gets interrupted by tremors shaking the village, coming from the Watchful Eye. That's the floaty probe thing the Ba'ul have in every Kelpian village to, keep a watchful eye on them. Oh, and also to beam them up when it is time to bring them to the dinner table and devour them. Burnham and Saru beam up to the Discovery. Their ship is quickly surrounded by not one, not two, but 10 giant Ba'ul ships. Captain Pike gets held by the Ba'ul and tries to be all Federation diplomatic to them, but the Ba'ul have detected Saru and demand the return of their property. But Saru ain't the same scaredy cat that he used to be. He's gotten some bass in his voice since he went through Vahari and his gangula dropped. He takes a stand for himself and yells at the Ba'ul oppressors that he ain't their property. He's motherfucking Commander Saru of Starfleet, and the goddamn Great Balance is bullshit. Pike tries to control the situation and keep the tensions from escalating. Shields get raised, weapons get made ready. Pike orders Saru off the bridge, but Saru doesn't want the ship in danger because of him, and he's ready to make a stand against the enemy of his people. He beams himself down to the planet and is immediately abducted by the Ba'ul. Saru finds himself imprisoned in a room with his sister Sarana. The Ba'ul have taken her also, and have them both locked up in a weird, dark, high-tech, sci-fi dungeon. Saru tries to defend Sarana from some smaller floaty probes. They slam him against the wall and chain him to it. Then, from a tar pit in the middle of the dark room, a Ba'ul predator rises. It's a tall, skinny, nasty thing that looks like Slender Man meets Venom, combined with a xenomorph, and a little bit of that evil chick from The Ring. This monstrosity towers over the Kelpian siblings. But Saru has evolved through the Vahari and ain't no punk. He doesn't have threat gangula no more. He's got attack gangula that pop out the sides of his head and shoot needles at the Ba'ul. And the Ba'ul, as scary as it looks, is actually frail and bitch-made, hiding behind the safety of a force field. It turns out the Ba'ul are actually much weaker than the Kelpians, and have had to rely on their technology to keep the Kelpians in check. It turns out that once the Kelpians were fierce creatures who fed on the Ba'ul, and almost drove them to extinction. The Ba'ul were able to take over the planet through their technology, and ever since have killed Kelpians before they enter the Vahari, preventing them from reaching their mature and less docile state. Saru is the first Kelpian to survive Vahari in 2,000 years. The Ba'ul are determined to keep the truth contained. The murderous monster returns to its slime pit, but not after ordering its probes to analyze Saru. One probe attacks Sarana while another comes after Saru. But he bursts out of his shackles with Kelpian strength, and he smashes the probes to pieces. He then uses the smashed bits to build a communicator and contact the Discovery. Saru and the crew decide the only way to free the Kelpians from the Ba'ul control is to use the signal from the sphere that triggered Saru's Vahari and distribute it across the planet to trigger the Vahari and all his fellow Kelpians. The disco transmits the signal, and the gangulas on all the Kelpians planet-wide start going crazy as they are wrapped in pain, being forced into the Vahari. But the Ba'ul aren't going to stand for this. They have a massive secret base underwater that rises to the surface. Turns out this is where Saru and Sarana have been kept. The Ba'ul power up the watchful eyes with an energy buildup that will exterminate all the Kelpians. Pike opens a channel to the Ba'ul and offers for the Federation to start negotiating a peace between the two species of Kaminar. The Ba'ul remain silent. Pike then orders Reese to start shooting the energy pylons, even though there is no way they can take them all down in time. But then the Red Angel shows up, flying down from the stars, and depowers the Ba'ul weapons. Saru gets a good look at the savior of the Kelpians, and sees the Red Angel appears to be a humanoid in some type of advanced tech flight suit. Back on the ship, Tyler and Pike review the information Saru reported on the Red Angel. Tyler is alarmed by the threat the Red Angel presents. Pike seems to think Section 31 and Tyler are being too paranoid. Saru then offers Sarana the chance to stay on the Discovery, but she says she needs to help guide their people through this new transition and help them learn how to coexist with the Ba'ul as equals. She then says Saru is welcome to visit whenever he wants. After they say goodbye, Saru talks to Burnham and lets her know how good it feels knowing he has given his sister a second chance on life. He encourages Michael to try to do the same for her brother Spock. She replies by letting Saru know that seeing him with Sarana has made one thing very clear to her, that she must return home as well. Roll credits. So, before we talk too much about like the main A story and everything going on with the Kelpians and the Ba'ul, the B story of this episode, I just want to talk about it because it's very brief, but in the beginning we do touch on Culber and seeing his return from the mycelial network a little bit, and how that kind of connects to what Saru has gone through with post Vahari, where he is a transformed man.
Right.
So is Culber, who's been turned into mushroom matter and then back into normal matter.
Back into a super jacked dude, I have to say. Now that we can see him without his full dress gown like kind of thing on, I'm like, damn, that dude works out. I'm weirded out by the fact that he doesn't have his facial hair, though.
Yeah, it looks a little weird to see him clean shaven, but...
Yeah. But he's meant to look visually different as he processes everything he's been through. I noticed that he shied away when Saru touched him a little bit, too. So he's presumably... I thought it was interesting, Stamets seemed to be a little bit oblivious to the fact that Culber was kind of almost dissociating, it seemed like. He was almost kind of numb or something. And Stamets was just, I think, so happy to have him back that he kind of didn't notice that his boyfriend is not doing so great.
I loved the writing in that scene. And it's so brief, but to me, I think it does so much. Because, for one, it reminds us, there's something going on there that they haven't had time to really explore a lot, but they obviously plan on delving back into that.
Totally.
Two, it shows the state that Culber is in, where he's clearly suffering from some post-traumatic stress. The way that he did freak out when he was touched. I think that's a really common thing with PTSD. That's also something, if you think about it, for months when he was in the mycelial network, the only thing touching him was little spore people trying to eat him.
Essentially, a touch meant threat.
Yeah. And also the way that Stamets was kind of being oblivious to Culber's obvious discomfort, but that felt like something that would really happen in a relationship where one person is ready to just be happy that things can go back to normal and like, oh no, like this isn't a big deal that you lost your scar and you might not be the same person. It's like, let's just not worry about it. Like, we love each other. Let's be happy. And I think that's something that felt very realistic, how two people in a relationship might act, where one person is trying to move the couple away from, worrying about the traumatic thing, just like, no, let's just get over it, let's just move on. And the other person is like no, like this is a big deal to me. And I think that positions them to do some cool drama in coming episodes.
It's a nice bit of realism in a story that was also about a guy being trapped in a mushroom spore universe. But yeah, it exactly mirrors things that anybody should be able to, I think, associate with in some ways. And I thought was well acted by all of them. It's also something that the serial format of Discovery is very good at, is that you don't process something in one episode. You process it over time, and even though dramatically we might need some closure after, during the course of a season, it's not going to happen all at once, as is so often, the done in one traditional Trek style. Where do you think they're headed with Culber, though? Like, if he's not do you think they're just kind of showing this to show the realism of sort of that PTSD situation? Or do you think there is more to be told about how he is... Is there something going to change in him?
I don't know if it's going to... I mean, there's obviously a bit of an arc planned out. I don't know if it's just going to be, like, him learning to, adjust to being back in the real world. Mm-hmm. Or if it's actually going to have, like, a bigger consequence whatever direction they push it into.
Right.
But I think it is cool how they just set it up with the anecdote about his scar from the time he got stitched up, and it inspired him to learn medicine and become a doctor. He doesn't have that anymore. So without saying too much, the viewer can infer that, like, oh, he's worried that he might not be the same person he was who died. He might be something different. And you kind of get into, like, a bit of, like, metaphysical philosophy. Sure. Of, like, am I the same person after I died, got copied into a mushroom realm, and then got transported back?
Right, with as the other doctor tells him, with a perfectly pristine new body. Stamets, to him, it's just, oh, weird, you lost your scar. To him, he's like, oh, I lost something that made me me. And it's clear that there's going to be some talking that's going to need to happen if they're going to get back together. It strikes me that it's possible he is not ready for any sort of relationship whatsoever, and Stamets' assumption that they'll go see the opera on the holodeck the next week might be a bit presumptuous.
Although I kind of don't want to see them, like, do the thing where, like, oh, they break up so that the audience can worry about their relationship and then eventually, like, celebrate them getting back together. Like, I kind of hate when shows do that, because it's, like, a very easy way to milk drama out of relationships.
Certainly they've had their share of angst already.
Like,
which is why I wonder if there's maybe something specifically being set up by this, but it's hard to tell.
I watched, like, the first 3 or 4 seasons of Flash.
Mm-hmm.
Or The Flash.
I don't know.
But what
I'm talking about the Barry Iris.
Yeah, the
stuff.
The CW super show with the Flash, and how he gets in a relationship with Iris, and they break up, and they get engaged, but then they get unengaged, and just I hate that style of writing.
There's a lot good about the show, but yeah, the kind of soap opera tropes that and in the comics, this kind of stuff happens sometimes too. It can really wear you down, because you can feel the drama being pushed into your face, and it doesn't feel organic, and yeah. But I agree with you in general. Kudos on this scene. Fascinated to see where it's headed.
And I kind of hate that in real life, when I know couples who, like, break up and get back together, and break up and get back together. It's like, it's never going to work out. Like, there's a reason you keep breaking up. Just, like, move on so you can both get on with your lives.
It's human nature.
Yeah. See, right now someone is listening to that, and they're like, oh, that's kind of like how me and my partner always break up and get back together, and I made them very self-conscious about their unhealthy relationship.
But you know what? I bet they're different. I bet they're the one that can make it work.
I'll take that bet. But yeah, so anything else about Stamets and Culber?
No, I don't think so. Let's jump onto Saru and the Kelpie and stuff.
Okay, so yeah, the main meat and potatoes of this episode.
Yep. Oh, by the way, speaking of meat, you were talking about the you were talking about the what do they call the aliens?
The Ba'ul?
The Ba'ul. You were talking about them eating the Kelpians. Do they eat the Kelpians?
That's what we've always been told.
Who told us that?
Everyone. Saru talked about how, like, his people were harvested.
I was just thinking, like, harvested could have other meanings, and we never saw it per se. I was just wondering I was trying to remember if they had shown anything concrete. It seems clear they were killing them or doing something really bad with them, but you never actually see it, right?
No.
Okay.
But yeah, like, I think, like, the most descriptive it ever got was when Saru tells Burnham, back in the first episode, when he says, "We are your livestock of old."
Right.
But yeah, the revelation, though, we learned that originally the Kelpians were the predators of the Ba'ul.
Yeah. It's an interesting spin on things where we have to recognize that the guys that we consider the heroes were once the aggressors. I don't know if it was supposed to be, and they didn't go into this so far back, where it was essentially like our Neanderthals being subsumed by Cro-Magnons. Were they warlike? The Kelpians never had high tech, so, were they somewhat primitive peoples at the time? Or, were they evolved enough to, kind of know full well what they were doing and not just be acting on instinct? Were they essentially animalistic?
Yeah, well, the way that the Ba'ul describes the old Kelpians was, he said, the ferocity, and it's kind of implied that they were just simply governed by their base instincts. So
right,
that's kind of the impression that I got, but it is kind of tainted by Ba'ul biasness. So who knows what the historic accuracy is? But,
right. I think we're certainly meant to at least infer there's some truth to it.
Yeah, that they were like the more barbaric ones, and then the only way that the Ba'ul got the upper hand and kept themselves from going extinct was through their more advanced technology. So it also is interesting that what we know about the Kelpian species now is that the whole threat gangula, always looking out for predators type of mentality, that's something that they only have during the early stages of their life.
Right. It's like the tadpole phase.
Even though, Saru's got to be, in his 40s by human years.
Right. Assuming
that they age kind of like humans. Because you got to assume, he was at least a teenager in The Brightest Star.
Right. And it's been 18 years.
Yeah. And, we said time to, go to Starfleet Academy and then become a commander.
Right.
So it would make sense if he was, 40.
Right.
But, we don't know how long they live.
It's a long puberty, Fatheree.
Yeah.
Let the Kelpians be what they are.
But his dad was old, and his dad hadn't gone through Fatheree when we saw him in The Brightest Star. But by his voice, I think it was meant to convey that this is a much older character.
Yeah, for sure. What normally triggers Fatheree?
I assume it's just an age thing. It just happens whenever you get old enough.
Right.
Like puberty, I guess.
And what do the Ba'ul do? When Fatheree is triggered, is that when you're called to be sacrificed?
Yeah.
Okay. So they presumably they're monitoring with their all-seeing eye stuff, which they call
the watchful eye.
The watchful eye. And then they're like, let's bring him in. So maybe there's some variation just because of weird genetics and stuff like that, and his people still sometimes grow old without having it happen. That may just be a weird Kelpian thing.
It's a cool sci-fi concept that kind of has enough real-world science in it to make it work. Because it does make sense for the younger version of the life form to be more terrified of everything. Because that's kind of like how human children are. If you leave a kid in a room and everyone else, walks out of the room and you turn the lights off, the kid will get scared and, run out. Children are kind of easily terrified of everything.
Right. Then we grow up into people who have fists for fighting and who and stronger bones for it if we have to.
But it's just an evolutionary thing. They're
right. Avoidance first and then combat.
Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense, even in a sort of sci-fi-ish variant, but it makes sense. Let me ask you: Did you feel, because the Ba'ul were super scary looking? I thought they visually made them amazing looking.
They looked awesome. The
super long fingers, the dripping tar. It reminded me of when the Uruk-hai emerged from their hatchery in Lord of the Rings.
I think this looked a billion times better than that.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying,
yeah.
Right? This guy comes out of goop, as if it was a placenta or something like that.
And not even just the visuals of the creature design, but also the way it was shot with the lighting and the distortion they put on the voice, like it really worked very effectively. Like this, speaking like little kids, this is something that would scare a little kid. Like it would be scary, I think.
Right, the equivalent of the Weeping Angels episode of Doctor Who. They even the Ba'ul, their ship sounded scary. Their energy powering up had an eerie vibration undertones and stuff. They did everything to make them visually terrifying, only to reveal that they had been essentially the oppressed. But at no time I never quite sort of can say I felt sympathy for them. In fact, throughout the episode, I was rarely have I been as on board, wanting to see the rebels bloody the nose of their oppressors as I was in the build-up to this. I really wanted to see Saru wreck one of these guys, just completely burn their empire to the ground, you know?
Yeah, and I never sympathized with them, but I did empathize with them. I can understand where they're coming from.
Right.
And I did like that moral complexity that Star Trek often does, where, you see the Gorn was obviously supposed to look like a scary monster.
Right.
Or the Horta in Devil in the Dark was, clearly meant to be a scary monster. And then you learn, there's a little bit more to the story.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I definitely sympathize with the Gorn and the Horta a lot more than with the Ba'ul.
Right.
But
once upon a time, they were... Presumably, they were honestly the more advanced one, group that got so scared by the predatory group that they developed this technology and these control devices. I'd kind of be curious to know how that happened. It's interesting to think of those something as scary looking as they were running around that are they're coming for us,
Well, maybe they
changed looks.
Maybe they lived in the water because that's where their ship maybe in the bottom of the ocean there's a layer of that tar that they live in. This is something that I thought of is maybe that's why the Kelpians use nets to get seafood, get kelp or seaweed or whatever it is that they eat.
Yeah,
that we saw in the Brightest Star, because maybe they used to use nets to capture Ba'ul and eat them when they were the predators.
I like this idea. Let's run with it.
But how cool is it that their threat gangula fall off and get replaced with weaponized gangula? That would be perfect for a predator. You look at your prey and your face is aimed at it, and then you shoot out needles.
Just tranquilize it.
Yeah, that's pretty effective.
Yeah.
One thing that always bothered me about Saru is that on Earth, most animals that are prey species, they have eyes on the outside of their head, whereas predators have eyes on the front that look forward. And I was kind of thinking that it would have been cool if they could give Saru eyes on the side of his head look somehow.
Right, even though that wouldn't go well with a mask, that they had made for him.
But if they had been able to create that, would have really conveyed the prey species thing.
Right.
But now it makes so much more sense to me because no, he originally evolved to be a badass predator.
Right. Wanted to touch on the prime directive stuff in this one. It comes up, and I kind of liked how Pike handled it, maybe on a more meta level. Everybody knows that Trek captains mess with the Prime Directive. It's kind of it's sort of how you show that you are not a company man in all cases.
Yeah. Although not to the extent that pop culture has made it out to be, that Star Trek...
where they just walk over it every time. Yeah. It's always informing their decisions, and they're always trying to minimize it if they have to break it. And that's what Pike said. He's let's see if we can bend but not break it. A simple way to put it, but I just thought it was a good way to do it.
So
Now, they did go and lead an entire revolution on the planet.
So I both love and hate some of the Prime Directive stuff in this episode. Just the first thing I want to talk about, what I love. That is, they clarified something that had, for a long time, had been my belief, that had been my theory, is that when an alien species is already aware of, warp travel, and maybe, they've had contact with other alien races and stuff, it's okay to, show them that you exist. Because we see examples of that constantly when we see Starfleet interacting with people who do seem to be pre-warp. We saw it in the original series all the time, and, the people in the opening of Mirror, Mirror don't seem to have warp technology.
Right.
Or Friday's Child, they clearly don't. Or A Private Little War, they clearly don't. Next Generation, Code of Honor, I kind of get the vibe those people don't have warp technology.
Right.
So I think like if you've already met other species and you're already like aware of space travel and warp drive and stuff like that, I've long time had like the theory that it's okay to, you know, talk to those people, to say hi.
Right. And they kind of made that concrete here.
Yeah, when Burnham says that, you know, General Order 1 would allow us to contact them, it's a judgment call.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the idea that, like, in those situations, you know, mirror, mirror, we want to trade for dilithium crystals on this planet. I think, you know, the Federation or Starfleet would probably be like, okay, go ahead and talk to these people. Even though they don't have warp technology, they know, maybe they've met, like, the Klingons or the Gorn or someone.
We can't turn back time and stop that, so we might as well proceed with as best we can.
Yeah.
I feel, by the way, just thinking about this, that there's a story to be told, perhaps about Section 31, or it even could be a more moral group who is considering even prompting or setting the Klingons or some other race to find a pre-warp planet in order to then later make contact and trade with them for dilithium crystals or something like that.
That'd be some shady stuff.
It would be, but I can see, you know, I can see it's like, what if it's like one of those, this will end the war if we can only do it. There has to be like some regulations that would keep you from just like letting some Orion pirates or whatever just find out about it and make a raid. They have to watch for that, but there's definitely, I think, a story to be told around it, even if it's Section 31 dodgy business.
That's pretty cool, though. I'd like to see that explored.
Yeah.
But the other part of the Prime Directive that I think a lot of people forget about is that even if it's a species that has warp drive that you've known for centuries, the Federation is still not supposed to get too involved with their internal affairs.
Right.
That's why the Federation could not participate in the Klingon Civil War that happened in the Next Generation between seasons 3 and 4.
Right.
When the Duras family and and Chancellor Gowron had the two sides of the Empire fighting each other. You know, the Enterprise D had to stay out of that conflict.
I've forgotten that. Did they specifically invoke the Prime Directive as the reason?
Yes.
Okay.
We also hear it a little bit in Deep Space Nine when Picard leaves Sisko in charge of the station and tells him, your objective here is to do everything short of violating the Prime Directive.
And everybody's on the same page with warp technology.
To get Bajor ready to join the Federation.
Right.
And so, you know, that meant that... Like,
so they basically have a broad policy of non-interference that this also encompasses.
Yeah, but this episode does seem to really break that hard. And I could have done with that being talked about a bit more in the episode.
If you think about it, if you want to go at it from a realistic standpoint and kind of ignore what had to happen for dramatic purposes, Pike came this close to getting the Kelpian race exterminated because he broke the Prime Directive. In fact, arguably, they would have come close. They could have been exterminated or come close to it if the Red Angel hadn't shown.
Before that, he had already, you know, broken the Prime Directive. So are you saying that was like his justification?
Well, they wanted to go back because why did they go? They went there because the Red Burst was there,
right?
And Saru. He's like, please promise me you're not going to lead a revolution. Well, Saru immediately sets in motion a chain of events that create a revolution and almost get his people exterminated.
It doesn't really cross any lines to me until they say, like, oh yeah, we'll Vahari all of the Kelpians.
Right.
We're going to force puberty on everyone and try to make, like, these two races live as equals.
It's a very Kirk... It feels like a Kirk decision to me.
Like, that's when he crossed the line.
Yeah, but... Dramatically, I think it was a good line to cross. It's true that I don't really want Star Trek to always be tiptoeing and like worrying too much about realism. So I feel like it was in the story that they wanted to tell, it was the right decision. And so I don't actually hold it against them, but I think some fans, you know, people who will look at the Federation and say, oh, the Federation is actually kind of a corrupt organization. Look how many... bad admirals they've had. Look at all the dodgy things that have happened under their auspices. Why didn't they protect these civilizations that died? And you know, you can nitpick the Federation pretty hardcore if you want. And I think this episode would give you good ammunition if you want to.
I mean, when he does really like crossed that line that I'm saying he crossed, that's when he almost got them exterminated.
Right, but it was set in motion by Saru.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. They were never going to kill all the Kelpians.
Saru told his sister what happened to him and about presumably they knew about other civilizations out there. Or no, she didn't.
The Ba'ul were gonna kill Saru and his sister because they knew that they were the only 2 Kelpians who knew you can survive the Fatheree.
Sure, that's how it played out. But Pike didn't know that was going to happen. For all he knew, Saru could blab to his sister, who would then blab to everybody because she's a priestess and has high stakes. He did know.
They were they were like on the phone with, like, Saru built a communicator and called Pike. And was like, yeah, we basically don't like that our people keep getting, like, killed. So if we tell the truth to everyone, we're going to need everyone to go through the Fatheree. So let's do that. Like, the crew helps. They come up with a plan. It's like you have Tilly and Burnham on the ship. They're like, yeah, we'll just Fatheree everyone. We'll use the signal from the sphere. And after that, it was only at that point that the Ba'ul were like, oh, fuck this. We're killing all the Kelpians.
I'm just saying, I think that could have come around with merely the spread of the word of the Federation and that what Saru had gone through. Even if they didn't understand why, how the Fatheree worked, even if they hadn't been Fathareed, he could have essentially created a quiet revolution that would have could have still ultimately led to them almost being exterminated.
As an alternative, Pike could have just, like, beamed up Sarana and Saru, and they'd been like, okay, Ba'ul, none of the other Kelpians will learn about the secret of the Great Balance being a lie, and he wouldn't have to...
I feel like that's almost the story that they might have told if this was a Next Generation episode. I mean, there would have been more complications and stuff, but I feel like that's almost the direction that they might have gone.
I mean, then you'd have, like, Saru and Sarana pissed about, like, no, like, we need to, like, save all of our people, and...
So here's the thing. For me, I'm sort of devil's advocating against the Federation here, but I don't actually feel that way. Like, you know, I'm glad that the story went the way it did, and I feel like Pike made the right decisions within the fictional... rule-breaking tradition of Star Trek. What were you actually bothered by any of these?
Yeah, because what he did would have gotten them all killed if Red Angel Deus Ex Machina hadn't shown up and was like, God damn, Pike, you fucked up. You almost killed all these people. Let me fix this for you.
Trek has its share of Deus Ex Machinas. This episode had a few things that touched on Deus Ex Machina concepts.
The crew of the Discovery, like, didn't save the day. Like they basically, like, their incompetence almost got the whole race genocided. And an external force that wasn't, like, our core team of characters had to come in and save the day. That's very anti-Star Trek to me.
You know, I feel like the Red Angel might have not saved, it basically, like, saved all the Kelpians. I feel like the Disco probably could have saved a lot of the Kelpians.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't see them shoot down those energy pylons.
I kind of wanted to see them shoot it. They haven't shot stuff in a while.
They haven't shot stuff all season.
I won't lie, I kind of want to see them shoot stuff.
The only time they shot anything is when they shot at Spock's shuttle that Giorgio was on.
Right. So yeah, a little bit more shooting is just a thing that I would like to see.
I think we'll see some shooting in the second half of the season. But I think this is also a reaction to the entire war we saw in the first season.
Right.
So there's a lot of shooting then.
It's true. I generally am for a more pacifist approach to depicting the Federation where they don't have to go in guns blazing all the time. It's just that guns blazing is occasionally a Trek tradition.
Yeah. But it is kind of cool when you just have, like, that tension between the Ba'ul ship, and then you see, like, oh, there's actually, like, 9 other ships behind it, and they're all big.
Yep.
And I'm glad that they did that, because the Ba'ul seem like they'd be, like, a little primitive compared to the Federation. They've only had warp technology for 20 years.
Right.
But if they're, like, a deeply isolationist culture, that they've probably, like, really built up their planetary defenses, and if they have, like, 10 ships that big...
Yeah,
they like, the Disco could probably cut through a few of them, but I don't know about 10. So there's definitely menace and threat there.
Their ships looked great, too, I thought. In fact, just to briefly touch on their technology and the sort of threatening nature of all of them, this is a sort of a more of a subtext kind of thing, but the fact that we didn't see them until, like, what, halfway through the episode? Something like that?
Yeah, we don't actually see Ba'ul until, like, 30 minutes into it.
Right. Everything we see is through their monitors, their ships, their drones, And I felt like this was, like, in a subtle way, without, like, making it the theme of the episode, a critique on, like, drone technology. They were very distant from, and arguably, like, had become so removed from their victims that they were not able to reach or even consider the possibility of a truce with them, which had to almost kind of be forced on them, because that created that distance between them. They were just blips on a screen, basically, it seemed like, to the Ba'ul. So, anyway, I thought it was a nice subtle way to maybe say something about drones without being like, oh, that's the episode about drones.
Yeah, no, I picked up on that too, and I thought it had a lot of relevance to a world where there are a lot of Western imperialist powers that massacre villages of civilians through robots that fly in the sky.
Right.
Like, that's a thing that happens in our world.
I remember reading about them years ago, and when I didn't know a lot, and I found out that the gist of this article was that drones were, like, so effective that they were, like, becoming... that was their problem, is that they were, like, raising the terror level in like, all these countries where they were used to the point where the civilian population that would, prefer not to be engrossed in war, were being terrorized.
Yeah, you're creating terrorism.
Yeah, and I had never lensed it that way before, and so they didn't. What I liked is that this episode did not have the problem that was directly like that. It just kind of made you think about those types of things and the way drones distance you.
Yeah.
Also, they looked cool. And I liked seeing Saru crush that shit.
Yeah, I was really cheering for Saru when he goes into, like, beast mode and he breaks out of the where they had him chained up against the wall and started crushing those things.
That had to be fun for who's the actor?
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones. He got to fire ganglia spikes in this one. He got to like break out of manacles. He got to wrench up floor panels. He got to crush drones.
But I was also a little annoyed with Saru early in the episode, where you knew he was going to act a fool when they're on the phone with the Ba'ul.
Yeah.
And they have hailing frequencies open. Like, you knew he was going to, like...
He just starts talking over Pike. He just, he doesn't... Pike was not in control very strongly in this episode. Saru kind of walked on him a little bit.
Yeah, when he wouldn't get out of the captain's chair.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was kind of fun.
And he's kind of like a little bit of like a moody teenager.
Like Groot.
But let me ask you this, because one of the big arcs in Star Trek Discovery is seeing Saru become the commander.
Right.
That he has become. Do you think now, post Vahari, do you think he is better suited to be captain, or do you think he's probably worse now? Because, like, he's kind of...
This calls to mind...
kind of on a power trip.
This calls to mind the enemy within a little bit, and its notions that the aggressiveness is a key component to being able to lead, and it needs to be at least somewhere in the mix, a certain level of aggressiveness. Right now, he seems to be leaning towards it, but you do see also these very subtle scenes, whether when he's talking to his sister, when he's talking to Burnham, even when he was talking to Culber. So it certainly seems like he's capable of it. I think arguably he was only truly aggressive when it came to freeing his people and what he felt about the Ba'ul.
Yeah, after he got woke and learned that he's been oppressed, he's a victim of this horrible systemic oppression. Mm-hmm. And then he got a little too carried away when he's like yelling at his right. comrades and his captain of all people.
Yeah. He is lucky Pike did not slap him down.
Pike is a good boss.
Pike is. He's not a Jellicoe. He's not a Lorca.
I was sad just thinking about how he's might not going to be around after the season 2, mm-hmm. but in a way I kind of like that, because if we don't see too much more of him, I know that like they can never tarnish him from being. I think going forward he is probably my second favorite Star Trek captain.
Do you think there's any possibility they'll spin him off?
I don't know. I don't know.
They'll have cast Spock, Number 1, and him. Is Number 1 definitely going to be in more episodes? Do we know?
I mean, I'm assuming you didn't get Rebecca Romaine for one little scene in the mess hall.
I would not think so either. I had a friend who thought that was the case, though, and that friend is a fool.
Well... How much does your friend know about like the production of television?
Jack shit. No, Randy does a podcast on TV. He actually knows a fair amount.
Then he should know better.
I thought so too.
Surely he doesn't think that.
I'm saying. I heard that secondhand.
Oh, Kelsey Grammer showed up on Star Trek for like 20 seconds one time.
It's true,
but that was obviously meant to be a cameo. Rebecca Romaine was meant to be more than a cameo.
It does make you wonder if there's, like, beyond the show, if they might be considering running with these characters. I don't think either of us were like, yeah, we would like another show set in this exact time. Just, it's cramming a lot of shows in Kirk's era.
It would be kind of redundant to have two ships going around, exploring space, set at the same time.
Right, and one of them is the Enterprise, but you kind of can't do too much with it, because Kirk has to be the guy who does most of the cool stuff with Enterprise. Nevertheless, I'm gonna think about that, because I certainly do like Pike, and it would be kind of hard to not be somewhat enthused to see him running a show.
Yeah, no, if they announced that, I would be excited for it, but...
We were talking about Saru and his mood swings and stuff. I did want to mention something specific. When he was talking to his sister, I thought that was a really great, emotive scene. And not only that, it's one of those, I think both of us noticed that the music stood out for me in this episode.
Yeah.
On our like things we wished we want to see in season 2, one of the ones that I was hoping for was like more memorable musical cues, and I thought that I think they were playing around with some of the Discovery, the traditional themes that they use in Discovery, but I felt like they hit like a peak with that sequence with his sister, and then there was also some good tense and action music near the end throughout the whole thing. Like I was pretty pumped during all the end sequence stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when the Season 2 soundtrack is made available. I definitely want to go back and re-listen to some of these tracks. There's also a cue that's from the very ending of Season 2, Episode 1, Brother. When Burnham sees Spock had, like, the drawing of the 7 red bursts, and she's like, oh my god, Spock, what have you done?
Mm-hmm.
Where have you gone? What's going on here? And there's like this little musical cue that when they talk about Spock in this episode,
mm-hmm.
they use it again that I really like. And I love musical continuity on TV.
Does it have
anyways.
like that? Is it tinged a little bit Vulcan style? Like that slightly exotic woodwind or whatever they use for Vulcan-y stuff?
No.
Alright, just curious.
But
I can't quite picture it in my head. Well, I'll go back and check it out later.
I knew like there's no way Dave is going to remember this music from the first episode of the season. But another thing I want to talk about, though, is we're kind of getting in this direction about like the music and like the budget of the show is really showing through in a lot of these episodes this year.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason, supposedly, why Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts are no longer the showrunners is that they might have spent a little too much money. They're like, we're now in... This is the first episode from when like they've been fired. It was like this episode went into production when Alex Kurtzman had just taken over.
This seems like this episode cost a shit ton.
I know. So it makes me wonder how true that original news was.
As to like what some of the reasons were.
I am kind of feeling sometimes that the show has too much production value. Because like the cinematography in this episode,
mm-hmm.
I thought it was very well directed.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few times where it gets a little crazy, especially in the beginning when Tyler and Pike and Burnham are having a meeting,
mm-hmm.
and the camera is just constantly spinning around the table. I know, like you said this, you were like constantly like taking notes on your phone, so I don't know if you noticed some of this.
Yeah, sometimes that stuff may elude me. I'm not like constantly taking notes, but when I do, I might be looking down for a second or two here and there.
But I know, like a lot of people were complaining about like that made them like sick to their stomach and stuff. It didn't bother me, but I
mean, there's a long tradition of cameras roaming around people in conferences and movies. You do it because otherwise talking heads are bored.
But it is kind of distracting because I'm watching this thinking like no other Star Trek show would have shot this like this or anything close to this. The opening of the episode, it's kind of like a long shot with like these, I'm gonna call them Aquaman transitions, because like if you've seen the movie Aquaman, you know that like James Wan will like cut back and forth a lot of times like in and out of flashbacks, but he'll like show a character that's kind of like they're in like one shot and like one time, or they're like in another shot and like a different time or a different location. Mm-hmm. Or like he'll like do like these cool transitions like
you're talking about like where it like stays on the person and it's like they were showing them 10 years ago and then it's the present.
And then like
and it just like, kind of morphs into their slightly older self and the background changes.
Well, no, like the camera like spins around something and then...
Oh, and it's a new timeline.
Yeah. That's what's going on like the first 5 minutes of this episode. And it didn't really bug me or anything. I thought it was pretty cool actually. But then when it shows Saru talking to Culber, even though like I really loved that scene and was, went out of my way to bring it up before we talk about anything else, that was way too handheldy. Where I hate handheld camera stuff in general. I think it is incredibly overused. I like
handheld a lot of times.
Shoot it on a fucking steady cam, and you can still do like these cool long swooping scenes. To me, it's so distracting when I know there's a camera guy on set right there going back and forth like this.
Sometimes I notice it does bother me, but I like the intimacy of a handheld camera sometimes. It kind of allows you to get right up in there and have a feel of being among the conversation in a way that a steady cam is not going to pull off.
It distracted me in this episode.
All right,
but yeah,
I'll be curious to hear if that bothered anybody. I actually thought when you were talking about budget and things like that and their showiness, I thought you meant occasionally like when they would have like the photon torpedo cam in the previous episode, or just kind of go out of their way with some of the sci-fi special effectsy stuff.
No, I love seeing like more of the ships. What I dislike is seeing that weird thing in the first episode of the season. The gravity lift or whatever for the asteroid, it was like a little disc.
The transformer.
And then like it expanded in like this giant thing.
Yeah.
And I hated there is a shot in this episode where you see Sarana looking out the window of Discovery, and you see like the surface of the ship up close. And just I was like, I'll have an image on the video if you watch this on YouTube or on Facebook. It had like way too much detail on there that really bugged me.
Right, it's like the whole plating, instead of being kind of like obviously there's some detail to it, but like when you're so close that you can see somebody's face through a window, you don't want to see like grill work and little raised areas and detailed sections. You want some smooth planes. But no, I think no set designer now, as you were saying earlier off mic, like they feel like they've got to earn their paycheck. And if they're designing the set that's seen outside, or the hole that's seen outside the window, they want to make their set of outside that window look cool.
Yeah, well, and that was a CGI shot. Yeah. So it was a CGI artist like, oh, I have all this money, I'm just gonna like create like the most elaborate texture possible right here.
Well, what he should know is that Fatheree wants him fired. He went too far.
No, I'm just saying, like, maybe reel back, maybe, like, use the budget to do some different stuff. Like, I don't know, maybe, like, build a classic bridge on the Enterprise. It looks a lot more like the original series than the bridge on the Discovery. And, like show that when we see the bridge of the Enterprise, if we ever see that. Maybe do something like that with your budget, instead of putting a super elaborate texture on the CGI model.
It didn't bug me too much. I don't think I noticed it until you mentioned it. I'll be curious to see if... but I'm generally watching these on my computer a lot of times, and then sometimes on your larger TV. So sometimes detail like that would be lost on me.
But I said at the beginning, like, I did have some, like, nitpicks. I had, like, some bigger criticisms and also some little ones. Another one, though. How the hell did Saru beam down when shields were raised? That bugged me. Just put in a line that he like lowered the shield when he beamed down to the planet and turned himself over to the Ba'ul.
Yeah.
When Burnham had the phaser on him, almost like when she had a phaser on Giorgio in the first episode.
Right. If he was just saying that he had like a set, so there was a millisecond pulse of shields dropping when he did it or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Or if Burnham helped him, if he was like, Burnham, lower the shields for me. Like, let me do this.
Right.
Like, let me do this for my sister, like you would do this for your brother.
She did let him do it, right?
Yeah, like she could have stunned him.
So I guess here sometimes the question is, would that extra line or two of dialogue have done anything but like kind of be there for continuity nerds? Does it propel the story forward, or is it enough to just say he beamed down?
I mean, I think in Star Trek, that's the thing you do. Like, you explain... Like, you don't, like, abandon how your technology works just all willy-nilly like that.
It's not
like,
the science fantasy of Star Wars. Yeah, I agree with you.
Here's the thing, is, like, if they had that line in there, it would have bought... Out of the 7 billion people in the world, it would have bothered 0 of them.
Right.
By not putting that line in there, it bothers several people. So why not put it in there?
Right.
But...
Yeah, I think there's sometimes they're sort of like, well, would we rather do a technobabble line or would we rather do a character development line? I think that's where they're thinking.
You can do both. This is on a streaming service. You can run the episode as long as you want. It doesn't have to fit into a network's time slot.
Yeah, but I do kind of wish, I am far, far less continuity bothered than you, but like, beaming through shields is a big thing in Trek. You cannot do it. Even
though it has happened, people have fucked that up before.
Right. But like, you should avoid it if you can, because it's one of the kind of the few actually very hard canonical things. Just as like the difference between impulse and warp. They've bungled that too, but it's you want to try and keep those core things straight about Trek.
But this is in my little nitpick section.
All right.
It's not that big of a deal, but
what else you got?
Well, just a little bit about like Tyler and Section 31 and that relationship with Tyler and Pike.
Yep.
How they're at odds.
Yes.
We know from last week that Pike does not like having Section 31 on the ship, but he's a good soldier. He's following orders from the Admiral. He's gonna work with Section 31 to investigate Spock and the Red Angels and everything. But we see, like, Tyler is the alarmist. He's kind of like Worf on The Next Generation. He's like, these Red Angels are a threat. They clearly have time travel technology. What harm can they do? We need to approach them aggressively. And, Pike is kind of dismisses some of that as paranoia. He even calls them paranoid. He even calls Section 31 paranoid.
Yep.
At one point, though, when Pike, at the beginning of the episode, actually, when Pike is talking about how, the Red Angels might be very benevolent. They've sent us on rescue missions, and Tyler says something along the lines of, they send the ship to crises that, for all we know, they created. It made me think of J. Jonah Jameson and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
How he's like, this guy's a menace. Maybe he's creating all these disasters.
Yeah.
That's why he always shows up there to save people.
That's
bring me pictures of the Red Angels. I need photos.
It did occur to me that them traveling just wherever the red bursts were going and kind of following it felt like kind of dangerously close to like following like a prophet or something like that. Like they were trying to fulfill some dynasty or something like that, or some prophetic dynasty, which fits the faith science thing, but would certainly like be making me nervous if I were on their ship that they are following like essentially these soothsayers about whose motives they have no idea about, even though it does seem like they're helping in all cases.
And Tyler also took a big dig at Pike in the end of this episode.
You pointed it out to me, and I hadn't noticed it. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, where he brings up that the war really had a toll on the people who actually fought in it. Because we know that Pike has guilt from sitting out the war on the Enterprise.
Right. You say sitting out, I mean, they were literally assigned to the far reaches of the galaxy. He wasn't like bone spurs or something like that. So he wanted to be there, but the Enterprise was off doing its mission, and everybody on the ship felt guilty over it. But it's a sore spot for him, and Ash pressed it.
But I think, and I love Pike. I think he's my second favorite captain, next to only the emissary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Pike kind of deserved that because he was so nasty to Tyler last week. But at the same time, I agree with Pike being nasty because I can understand not wanting Section 31 on your ship.
Yeah.
So I love the character writing on the show. Like I love the dynamic between Tyler and Pike now, and that was not something I was expecting to really be a thing. So that's kind of cool.
There are all sorts of interesting dynamics and some unusual pairings that they had, whether it was Saru and Culber in this one, or as you note, like Ash and Pike.
All right, you got anything?
Do we want to talk about who we think the Red Angel is?
Okay, I was glad that you brought that up. So, yeah, the Red Angel, I think it's pretty clear at this point that it's not actually like a magical angel. It's not actually like a deity or anything. It's
ever since we saw that stained glass image where it looked like a suit, I was assuming it was something in a suit.
I said it looked like Ultron.
Yeah. And Saru's vision, acute Kelpian vision, confirms it looks like it's a suit.
Which they set that up in the first episode of the season.
Yep.
That he had like the super eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's a character in a suit. Now, it's either going to be a character that's already been established, or I guess it could be like a new character that will be unveiled, but that does seem kind of weird. You think like if they're creating a mystery, it's someone that we already know.
Maybe it's going to be like Rey's parents. That'll go over great with fans.
They open the helmet and it's just like nothing in there.
Yeah,
but what
I think it's more likely it's going to have to be somebody that resonates.
Maybe it's Jet Reno.
Oh, we didn't see her this episode.
It does look kind of feminine.
Right, you notice these slightly wider hips and stuff on it. So I think that's a reasonable guess that could be part of it. You know, you threw out the notion at some point of like, oh, maybe it's time traveling Burnham from some future date.
Well, that
does seem like the kind of thing they could do.
They do say that time traveling is probably involved with it because of the tachyon readings. So. Yep. It could be Burnham in the future coming back in time.
What if it was like something like as connected with something as important as like the Guardian of Forever?
What if it's Keiko O'Brien?
What, coming back to scold him in the present?
I think it's Neelix.
Actually, as I think about it, if the Guardian of Forever was like trying to correct some timelines in a far-flung future, they could use almost anybody from Next Generation's era, say, in that. The thing that I thought of, and like I have no way of knowing why they would be in an angel suit, was Wesley Crusher and the Traveler.
No, that could be.
And his future feminine hips. I don't know. I don't know.
Anything's going to sound ridiculous, but right. I have two that may or may not sound as... Well, maybe I have three.
Go. All right, let's hear it.
And then let me know if you have any. But, okay, one would be maybe the character Kraft from the short Trek Calypso, who we saw like 1,000 years in the future.
I was wondering the other day as I was talking about that with a friend, if there was some reason they might... that episode could be laying the seeds, just as Saru's was very overtly, if that could have been covertly seeding something.
Or it could be Zora, when the Discovery computer became alive in that episode. Like, maybe she, converted part of the ship into, a metal angel body and was able to, send it through time or something.
Yeah.
Maybe Zora is a product of the computer having all of that sphere knowledge that they copied from the dying sphere.
Right.
Maybe that's what made their computer get super advanced AI 1,000 years in the future. But, another theory, I really like this, I think it would be super cool, is what if, at some point after the Menagerie Part 2, the original series, that's when Pike...
Deep cut approaching.
That's when Pike is taken in his little wheelchair crippled body to Talos 4.
Right.
What if at some point after that, the Talosians... build him, this angel armor, and they're able to, send him through time to just be, this avenging angel of the galaxy, just going and, righting wrongs and correcting things, and you just have, this Captain Pike who's always just, flying through space and time, and maybe we even at some point get to see, a montage of where maybe the original series episode, Balance of Terror, when the Enterprise is in this cat and mouse battle with the cloaked Romulan bird of prey, and they're shooting a torpedo, and it's gonna miss the cloaked bird of prey, but the Red Angel Pike comes, moves the torpedo just enough where it hits the bird of prey, or maybe we see Star Trek First Contact where the Enterprise E is blowing up the Borg sphere, and Pike is there making sure the Borg sphere blows up, and just all these things throughout all the history of Star Trek. You have Captain Pike, one of the greatest captains ever, is just this time traveling angel hero saving the day and then vanishing without a trace.
So our audio-only listeners won't be able to see the insane look that I'm giving Fatheree right now. I was with you when it came to the notion that it could be some sort of suit for Pike. I don't think I want him to become a superhero, though, who travels around time and moves photon torpedoes an inch to the left. Please let that not be the case. But the basic underpinning of what you're saying could have some merit. I could see it.
I admittedly was taking that to ridiculous places.
Yes.
Something along those lines I think would be really cool.
Yeah. My notion is Wesley and the Traveler.
No.
But if it's a more feminine form, and I'd like to see somebody that we know, that's why I'm still holding on the notion that it's Guinan's people.
An Elorian?
Yeah. But exactly what's going on is something that we cannot guess based on the given clues.
Those people get blown up by the Borg at some point.
It's true. They also
they have survivors.
The notion
obviously.
that they would have a suit doesn't make a lot of sense. But I presume anybody from the next generation could be wearing the suit. It could be Dr. Crusher, feminine form, red hair, Red Angel.
Well, Tilly has red hair.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of somebody who they could bring in who you'd be like, oh my gosh, if they kept it quiet and Gates McFadden returns, is able to return in the final episode or two, and they keep it a legitimate secret, and we find out that she is, this is actually in some way going to set up some events in Picard's show because of the time period she's coming from. I could see it.
I think it's just going to be like Spock or Burnham, though, and it's going to be way less interesting than any of these things we're presenting. I don't know if they would use a character from another show because Discovery has tried to be so new audience friendly.
It's true. I think that's why I do think there's a reasonable case we made that it's just going to be a time traveling Burnham.
It could be number one, I guess. Oh my God! What if
do you think it's Michelle Yeoh?
What if number one is the Red Angel? But she actually evolves and becomes this higher life form that does appear in different time and space, and that's why Majel Barrett played so many different characters in Star Trek, because it was the Red Angel recreating itself as okay, I'm Troy's mom, okay, I'm Nurse Chapel, okay, I'm the voice of the computer. And it's just spread all throughout the timeline.
Again, if you're only listening to this in audio, you will not be able to see the crazy eyes I'm giving Fatheree. That's too nuts.
I like coming up with these crazy theories on the spot, though, because I get so excited about it. It's fun.
I hope it's Cybok, actually.
Yeah. Cybok 2020.
Is that who we're voting for? Anyway, so those are some of our crazy theories. I'd be interested to hear anybody else's, too.
Yeah, if you have any opinion on the Red Angel, by all means, let us know, and we might even read what you tell us on a future installment of Tex-Trek. Just I think Dave has some audience feedback that he's going to share with us.
So first up from YouTube, we've got Alexandra Sandhu, who writes, referring to the previous episode to this one, those 3 minutes on deck, probably the longest minutes in television history, lol. Let's see, this was the scene where
they have to get out of the mycelial network. They have the ticking clock, and they do take longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people are having these heartfelt conversations, and you're like, things are about to blow up, right? But it's a convention.
A common trope.
She goes on to note, Brian, your joy and enthusiasm are much appreciated. Nice call out to our co-podcaster Brian for the episode. And says, actually, the whole group dynamic is great, but Brian stood out for me today. Thank you all for the positivity. P.S. Fatheree, I definitely feel your pain regarding religion. But if I put my feelings aside, Holly had the best points on the matter, in my opinion. Humans appear to be naturally predisposed to believe, so ignoring the matter won't make it go away. I don't know how much evolutionary time will take for humans to grow out of it, if ever. Though I am an atheist, I think TNG's approach to religion was a bit simplistic and came across as rather condescending. I sort of agree with that, even though I kind of liked its condescension.
This is about our talk on religion last week, so if you're not sure what we're talking about, just go back and check that out. But
right, What led to us talking about that?
The use of religion in Star Trek Discovery with Pike, implying that he went to church with his cousin.
That's right. And she goes on to say, on the other hand, DS9 was a bit too spiritual for my liking. As for Discovery, I certainly don't care for resurrections and angels, but the story is not over yet, so we don't know where it'll land on the matter. Either way, it's a tough balancing act.
So, Alexandra, thank you so much for the feedback, and I agree with a lot of what you said there. And just one thing I do got to point out, as the big DS9 fanboy I am, the spirituality of that show didn't really bother me because the wormhole aliens were actually real entities.
Right, so you're saying all the religious magic stuff turned out to be science stuff.
Right.
Or had science underpinnings.
But, I mean, that's how it worked with my interpretation. But, yeah, thank you for bringing some of that stuff up to my attention. I do appreciate that.
Last comment here, Facebook's Adam B. Owen says, it was great to see Culber come back. I'm still not entirely sure how that works as a creation from Stamets' mind. I wonder if that means Hugh's mind is limited to only what Stamets thinks he should know. That could be a problem, but it'll be interesting to see how they resolve this. I can't imagine he just goes back to being Doctor right away. Good prediction there, because that is exactly what this episode we just reviewed showed, that he is not easily going back to being a Doctor. That said, I think that they're going to allow that he is the full Culber, I think. I think
Yeah.
just for based on Disco's history of expediency over kind of the next gen, let's look at this from a lot of nuanced perspectives, and I don't think he's going to be just like a figment, just like Stamets' memory of him. I think he's, for all practical purposes, is Culber.
Yeah. Adam, the way I think that worked was that in the moment that Stamets found Culber immediately after death, I think that Culber's mind was still intact enough that Stamets was able to just take his lover in his arms.
Physical contact happened.
And through that physical contact, like, create like an actual mycelial copy in the network, just because of like Stamets' connection. And I think it's probably treated as like, oh yeah, like in the heat of the moment, like he wanted that so bad. There's like his love for Hugh, made it happen. That type of writing that I'm largely okay with, because
it's Trinity in the Matrix.
Yeah, so I think that's how it works. But yeah, thank you for the comment. And also, Adam has all the cool custom ships that he makes. I'll include a link to that. So y'all can check out some of his custom ships. They're like the HeroClix scale.
Yeah, and 3D printed?
I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was checking them out earlier, and they are nice looking ships. I think he does a great job.
Yeah, all his own designs, I believe. They're all just custom designs that he comes up with.
But they all feel like they fall into the aesthetics.
Yeah, any of the ones I've looked at feels like it could easily be a canonical Star Trek ship.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that does it for this installment of Tex-Trek, and thus concludes our conversation of the Sound of Thunder. We will, of course, be back next Sunday to discuss Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 7. I believe it's called Light and Shadow.
Okay.
Light and Shadows, plural.
Okay.
Which I think it's probably safe to say this marks the first on-screen appearance of Ethan Peck's Spock.
A.K.A. Cybok.
No, it's not
if
going
our
to be...
crazy theory of Holly's crazy theory should come to pass.
If bearded Spock is actually bearded Cybok,
then we should, by the time, once we record about that episode, fans will have already burned everything to the ground. The civilization as we know it will be over as the great Cybok uprising of 2019.
I would be happy if that'd be so bold. I would have so much just appreciation of CBS All Access if they allowed that to happen.
Fingers crossed. Let the madness flow.
We'll find out, though, and we'll be talking about it Sunday. And until then, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.